The lecture hall smelled like burnt ozone and regret. Mostly regret, if Commander Vesh was being honest with himself. He stood at the podium, his 4 eyes scanning the assembled class of cadets from 17 different species, all gathered for Advanced Xenobiology 301, Understanding Deathworld Survivors. Today's topic, humans. All right, settle down, Vesh clicked, his mandibles twitching with what his students had learned to recognize as amusement. I know what you're all thinking. Another lecture about the pink apes from Terra. How exciting. He paused, letting the sarcasm hang in the air like a bad smell. But trust me, today is going to be educational. In the back row, a Calarian student named Fex raised one of her 6 tentacles. Professor, with all respect, we've been studying humans for 3 cycles now. We know they're durable, we know they're stubborn, we know they eat things that would kill us. Can we please move on to something actually dangerous? Laughter rippled through the classroom. A few students banged their appendages on their desks in agreement. Vesh's mandibles spread wider. Oh, this was going to be good. Funny you should mention that, Fex. Because today we're not just talking about humans. He tapped a claw against his data pad, and the lights dimmed. Today, we have a live demonstration. The laughter died instantly. A what? Squeaked Pim, a small furry Dexian who looked like he might faint. Relax, she's perfectly safe. Probably. Vesh turned toward the side entrance. Class, meet Specialist Elena Briggs from the Terran Defense Corps. The door slid open, and she walked in. Elena Briggs was not impressive at first glance. She stood maybe 1.7 meters tall, which was short by galactic standards. Her skin was that odd tan color humans got when they spent time under their yellow star. Her hair, dark and pulled back into what humans called a ponytail, swished as she moved. She wore standard TDC fatigues, nothing fancy, and carried herself with the kind of casual confidence that made Vesh's survival instincts twitch. Morning, she said, waving one hand. Her mouth split into a smile, revealing those flat omnivore teeth. Or whatever time it is on this station. Honestly, I've lost track. Specialist Briggs has volunteered to help me demonstrate some key concepts about human physiology and capability, Vesh explained. Now who can tell me what makes humans unique among sapient species? A Hawthian cadet named Grix. All scales and ego raised a clawed hand. They're from a Class 12 deathworld, high gravity, aggressive fauna, volatile climate. They evolved as persistence hunters and pack predators. Correct, Vesh said. But that's just background. What does it mean practically? Silence. Elena's smile widened. It means we're built different, as we like to say. Built different, Fex repeated, her voice dripping with skepticism. No offense, Specialist, but you look squishy. I've seen the dissection holos. No exoskeleton, no armored hide, no venomous capabilities. You're basically a bag of water held together by hope, and that strange optimism your species is famous for. The class laughed again. Even some of the more nervous students joined in. Elena's expression didn't change. You're not wrong. We are pretty squishy, but that's kind of the point. Vesh gestured with one claw. Specialist Briggs, why don't you show them what you mean? Let's start simple. Strength demonstration. How simple are we talking? Elena asked, rolling her shoulders. The joints made a cracking sound that caused several students to flinch. Did she just break her own bones? Pim whispered urgently. That's normal for them, Vesh assured the class. Horrifying but normal. Now Specialist, let's establish a baseline. We have a standard gravity resistance weight over here, calibrated to 1.5 times galactic standard. Most species can lift it with effort. Why don't you give it a try? Elena walked over to the cylindrical weight, sized to be challenging for someone of Grix's considerable mass. She bent down, gripped it with both hands, and stood up. The weight came with her like it was made of foam. Okay, she said, bouncing it slightly. This is cute. What else you got? The classroom went quiet. Even Grix looked uncomfortable. That's a 400-unit weight, he said slowly. That should require significant effort. Does it? Elena asked innocently. Huh, must be the gravity thing. Terror is what? 1.8 times galactic standard. We literally grow up fighting our own planet just to stand upright. This, she gestured with the weight. This is like carrying groceries. Vesh was enjoying this immensely. Let's increase the difficulty. Specialist, how much can you lift in optimal conditions? Elena set down the weight and stretched her arms across her chest. Depends. Deadlift? Squat? Overhead press? And are we talking what I can do or what humans can do? Because I'm pretty average. She's average, Vex muttered. Of course she is. Let's go with a practical scenario, Vesh suggested. Raw lifting capacity in a crisis situation. Fight or flight response engaged. You want to see the adrenaline boost? Elena's smile turned sharp. Okay, but you asked for it. She walked around the demonstration area, eyes scanning the assembled equipment and furniture. Then she stopped, looking at something in the corner that made Vesh's blood run cold. No, she wouldn't. Hey, Professor, Elena called out. What's that in the containment cage over there? Every head in the classroom swiveled to look at the reinforced enclosure in the corner. Inside, visible through the transparent aluminum walls, was a Krethian mantle cat. 3 meters of muscle, claws and teeth. One of the apex predators from Krethos 9 brought in as part of the xenobiology department's live specimen collection. That, Vesh said carefully, is Razor. He's completely off limits for demonstrations. Extremely dangerous. Class 7 predator. Bite force that can shear through standard hull plating. Perfect, Elena said. Excuse me? You wanted a strength demonstration. She started walking toward the cage. That thing probably weighs what? 350 kilos, maybe 400. Specialist Briggs, Vesh said, his voice climbing an octave. That is absolutely not happening. Why not? She reached the cage. Razor, who had been lounging, suddenly stood up, his 6 eyes focused on Elena, pupils dilating. A low rumble emerged from his chest. You said you wanted to demonstrate human capabilities. I'm demonstrating. The classroom erupted in shouts. Half the students were yelling at her to stop. The other half were already moving toward the exits. Pim had actually fainted. Elena, Vesh said, using her first name for the first time. That creature could kill you. Could he, though? She tapped the cage control panel, and before Vesh could override it, the door slid open. Time seemed to slow down. Razor tensed, his muscles coiling like springs. Elena stood perfectly still, her expression calm. The predator's rumble grew louder, deeper, a sound that triggered instinctive terror in every species in the room except one. Razor launched himself at her, all claws and fury and 300 kilograms of apex predator rage. Elena caught him. Her hands locked around his torso, just behind his front limbs. Her knees bent, absorbing the impact. For a moment Razor thrashed, his rear claws scrambling for purchase, his jaws snapping inches from her face. Elena lifted. She actually lifted the Krethian mantle cat off the ground. Holy stars, Grix breathed. Razor, confused by this turn of events, stopped thrashing. His eyes, all 6 of them, stared at Elena with what could only be described as bewilderment. She held him at arm's length, her muscles trembling with effort, but holding steady. Humans, she said, slightly breathless but grinning, have this neat trick. When we're scared or angry or in danger, our bodies flood with chemicals. Adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine. It overrides our normal limiters, increases our strength by 40, sometimes 50%. It's an evolutionary adaptation for surviving on a planet that really wanted to kill us. Put him down, Vesh managed to say. Please. Sure, Elena lowered Razor back to the ground. The predator, looking thoroughly humiliated, immediately scrambled back into his cage. Elena closed the door behind him and dusted off her hands. Good kitty. The silence in the classroom was absolute. Even the ventilation system seemed to have stopped breathing. Elena turned back to the assembled students. So yeah, built different. Any questions? Fix's tentacles had gone completely limp. That's not possible. The muscle fiber density required, the skeletal structure needed to support that kind of force. Oh, we pay for it, Elena assured her. I'm going to be so sore tomorrow. Probably pulled something. Might have micro-fractured a few bones. We heal pretty fast, but it's not fun. She paused. Also, don't try that at home. I'm trained for this stuff. Sort of. Vesh's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. Specialist Briggs. That was incredibly dangerous and absolutely not part of the approved demonstration plan. Yeah, but did it work? She looked at the class. Anyone here still think humans are just squishy water bags? No one answered. Several students were still staring at Razor, who had curled up in the back of his cage and appeared to be questioning his life choices. This, Vesh said finally, is why we study deathworld species. Not because they're invincible, but because they're unpredictable. Because they'll do things that make no tactical sense. Because when faced with something that should kill them, their first instinct isn't to run. He looked at Elena. It's to pick it up. Elena shrugged. Seemed like a good idea at the time. It was a terrible idea. But it was impressive, right? Vesh couldn't argue with that. Class dismissed. Those of you who are still conscious, please review chapters 12 through 15 for next session. We'll be covering human pack bonding and why you should never ever threaten something they've decided to protect. As the students filed out, still shocked and muttering among themselves, Elena walked back to the podium. So, how'd I do? You traumatized my entire class, gave me what humans call a heart attack, and probably violated 17 station safety protocols, Vesh said. But yes, it was effective. He paused. You know, we have 3 more sessions scheduled. I don't suppose you'd be willing to take it easier on the next demonstrations. Elena's smile returned, bright and terrifying. Professor, I haven't even shown them what humans can do when we're actually trying. Vesh felt a shiver run down his carapace. Stars help us all. Probably not, Elena said cheerfully. But hey, that's what makes us interesting, right? As she left, Vesh looked back at Razor, who was still huddled in his cage. The mighty predator caught his gaze and, if Vesh didn't know better, looked apologetic. Tomorrow's lecture was going to be about human pain tolerance. He was already dreading it. 3 days later, Vesh stood outside Medical Bay 7 reconsidering every decision that had led him to this moment. Through the transparent door he could see Elena doing pull-ups on an exposed pipe while the medical officer, a long-suffering Tithian named Dr. Morp, tried to scan her with increasingly frantic gestures. Specialist Briggs, please hold still for just 30 seconds. Morp pleaded, his tentacles waving in distress. I am holding still, Elena said between pull-ups. This is my resting state. Vesh entered, his mandibles already clicking in what humans had learned to interpret as resigned frustration. Specialist, you're supposed to be recovering. Elena dropped from the pipe, landing with a thud that made Morp flinch. Recovered. Past tense. Look, barely any bruising left. She pulled up her sleeve to show what was indeed only faint discoloration where she'd grabbed Razor. Told you we heal fast. Fast is relative, Morp interjected. By any reasonable medical standard, you should still be in significant pain. You compressed your radius and ulna, tore several muscle groups, and your cortisol levels were high enough to kill most species. But your pain response is... He consulted his data pad, looking disturbed. You rated it a 4 out of 10. Well, yeah, it wasn't that bad, Elena said. I once broke 3 ribs playing soccer and finished the game. This is nothing. She broke bones and continued recreational activity, Morp said to Vesh. This is why I drink. You don't drink. I'm considering starting. Vesh's mandibles twitched again. This was going to be good material for today's lecture. Specialist, are you ready for demonstration number 2? Elena's eyes lit up. Oh, absolutely. What are we doing today? Endurance testing? Temperature tolerance? Or we could do the pain threshold thing where I let something sting me and everyone freaks out. Please, no more stinging, Morp said weakly. The lecture today is on human sensory capabilities and threat assessment, Vesh explained. I thought we'd keep it simple after the incident with Razor. The incident, Elena repeated, grinning. Is that what we're calling it? Not the time I made a Class 7 predator question his entire existence. Some of my students are still in therapy. They're learning valuable lessons about the universe. Pim won't come within 50 meters of your species now. Elena's expression softened slightly. Okay, that's fair. I'll apologize to the little guy. But seriously, what's the plan for today? Vesh handed her a data pad. We're going to demonstrate human threat detection, pattern recognition, and intuitive decision-making under pressure. Nothing dangerous. Elena scrolled through the outline, her smile growing wider with each line. Professor, this is basically just me reacting to scary stuff and explaining why it doesn't scare me. Exactly. Simple, controlled, and most importantly, nothing gets lifted. You're no fun. I'm terrified. There's a difference. 20 minutes later, the lecture hall was packed. Word had spread about the previous demonstration, and now students from other departments had crowded in, including several faculty members who were officially there to observe teaching methodology, but were actually just curious about the crazy human. Vesh took his position at the podium. Welcome back, those of you brave enough to return. Today's topic is human threat assessment and sensory processing. To understand humans, you must understand that their homeworld didn't just make them strong, it made them paranoid. Elena stood beside him, looking relaxed in a way that made everyone else nervous. Hey everyone, glad to see most of you came back, except Pim. Where's Pim? Transferred to botanical studies, Feck said from the back row. He's studying moss now, very safe moss. That's probably for the best, Elena admitted. Vesh pulled up a holographic display. Humans evolved as both predators and prey. This created what we call hypervigilance. Their threat detection is, by galactic standards, excessive. Specialist Briggs, when you enter a new room, what do? Exits first, Elena said immediately. Count them, note which ones are accessible, which ones might be blocked. Then I scan for threats, highest to lowest probability. Then I identify cover, concealment, and potential weapons. Then I assess the people in the room, body language, positioning, who's paying attention to what. And how long does this take? Vesh asked. About 2 seconds. The class stirred. Grix leaned forward. That's not possible. The processing speed required. It's automatic, Elena explained. We don't think about it. Our brains do it in the background, constantly. It's exhausting, honestly, but it kept our ancestors alive long enough to reproduce, so here we are. Vesh nodded. Now let's test this. I'm going to show a series of images. These are scenes from various worlds, some dangerous, some not. I want you all to identify potential threats. The first hologram appeared, a peaceful meadow on some garden world, flowers swaying in a gentle breeze. The class relaxed. No threats, Feck said confidently. Elena's expression hadn't changed. Tall grass at 10 o'clock could conceal something. Wind direction suggests approach from downwind. Those flowers are bright, probably poisonous given standard evolutionary pressure for warning coloration. The tree line is close enough for ambush predators, and that rock formation has caves, guaranteed. Vesh clicked to the next image before anyone could process that. What about this one? A busy marketplace on a trade station. Crowds of various species, vendors, bright colors, chaos. Too many people to assess individually, Grix said. Wrong, Elena cut in. Guy at 3 o'clock, blue carapace, hands in his coat, eyes scanning too regularly. He's security or a threat. Group at 9 o'clock moving against crowd flow. They're either lost or following someone. Vendor second from left has his merchandise too neatly arranged. He's new or a front. Emergency exits are blocked by those cargo containers, fire hazard, and whoever designed this market is an idiot, because there's only 2 ways out. The class stared at her. You got all that in 2 seconds, a student named Krell asked. Less. I'm going slow for the lecture. Vesh's mandibles clicked rapidly. Pleased. This is what I mean. Human brains are constantly running threat assessments. It's why they seem paranoid. They're not paranoid, they're just processing more danger data than we are. It's actually really annoying, Elena added. I can't just relax at a cafe. I'm always thinking about what could go wrong. My therapist says it's because Terra tried to murder my species for millions of years, so we developed anxiety as a survival trait. Your species weaponized anxiety, Vesh said slowly. That's horrifying. It gets better, Vesh said, which was a lie because it definitely got worse. Specialist, let's talk about pain tolerance. How do humans process pain differently? Elena rolled her shoulders. That same bone-cracking sound that made everyone flinch. Okay, so pain is basically just data, right? It's our body saying, hey, something's wrong. But humans have this neat ability to just ignore it when we need to. Ignore pain, Grix repeated. That's not how pain works. Pain is a survival mechanism. You can't just ignore it. Watch me. Elena pulled out a small blade from her belt. Before anyone could stop her, she made a shallow cut across her palm. Blood welled up, bright red, and the class collectively gasped. Specialist, Vesh shouted. Relax, it's barely a scratch. Elena held up her hand, blood dripping. See? This hurts. My pain receptors are firing, but I'm ignoring it because I have higher priorities, like demonstrating a point. Humans do this all the time. Finish fights with broken hands. Run marathons on stress fractures, deliver medical care while injured. We just decide the pain isn't important right now. Morp, who had insisted on attending this lecture, looked like he might pass out. That's not medically possible. Pain overrides conscious thought. Not in humans. Elena wrapped her hand in a cloth. We can literally think our way through pain. Not all of it, obviously. Enough damage and we'll shut down like anyone else. But our threshold is way higher than most species. Has to be. Terra didn't give us armor or venom or anything useful. Just stubbornness and the ability to keep going when we should quit. This explains so many combat reports, Vesh muttered. Humans who should be down just keep fighting. Yep. Elena grinned. We're too stupid to know when we're beaten. Vesh decided to move on before she demonstrated anything else alarming. Now let's discuss pattern recognition. Humans are exceptional at finding patterns, even where none exist. Specialist. Oh, this is fun. Elena pointed at the holographic display which now showed random static. Anyone see anything? The class stared. It's noise, Krell said. Look closer, Elena insisted. Top left, that cluster almost looks like a face. Middle right, that's a predator shape, if you squint. Bottom, possible weapon silhouette. There's nothing there, Vesh said. You're seeing patterns in randomness. Exactly. Elena looked delighted. That's the point. Human brains are so good at pattern recognition that we see faces in clouds, predators in shadows, threats in nothing. It's called pareidolia. It's why we had so many gods and monsters in our early history. We couldn't stop seeing patterns and meaning everywhere. Vesh nodded. This makes humans excellent at tactics and strategy. They see connections others miss. But it also makes them paranoid and superstitious. I prefer the term cautiously prepared, Elena said. You carry 3 knives to a lecture hall, and I'm very prepared for any knife-requiring situations that might arise, which statistically is basically never, but you never know. The class was beginning to look overwhelmed. Vesh recognized the signs. Time for the finale. All right, last demonstration. Specialist Briggs, I'd like to test your reaction time against our fastest student. Grix, would you volunteer? The Horthian stood, confident. Gladly, my species has a neural response time of 0.08 seconds. What's human average? About 0.25 seconds, Elena said. So you're way faster. Should be easy. Vesh set up a simple test. 2 buttons, separated by 3 meters. First one to press their button when the light flashed 1. Simple, objective, impossible for Elena to cheat with strength or endurance. They took positions. The light flashed. Elena's hand was already moving before Grix registered the change. She hit her button first, then calmly walked back to the podium while Grix stared at his hand in confusion. How? He demanded. You waited to see the light change, Elena explained. I was watching your body language. Your muscles tensed 0.03 seconds before you moved. I didn't react to the light. I reacted to you preparing to react to the light. Humans are really good at reading other humans, and by extension other species. We don't have the fastest reflexes, but we're excellent at predicting what others will do. That's cheating, Grix protested. That's strategy, Elena corrected. If we can't be fastest or strongest or toughest, we'd better be smarter and more observant. That's how persistence hunters work. We don't catch prey by being faster. We catch it by being more persistent and better at predicting where it'll go. Vesh let the moment sink in. This class is why humans are considered a strategic threat, despite their individual limitations. They compensate for physical disadvantages with intelligence, pattern recognition, and an apparently limitless capacity for creative problem solving. And stubbornness, Elena added. Don't forget stubbornness. We're really, really good at not quitting. Vesh raised a tentacle. Specialist, hypothetically, if humans are this capable, why don't they dominate galactic politics? Elena's expression turned serious. Because we learned something important. Just because you can do something, doesn't mean you should. Just because you can survive something, doesn't mean you should force others to. We're dangerous. Yeah, but we're also trying to be better than our worst instincts. That's kind of our whole thing. Every generation trying to be less terrible than the last. The lecture hall went quiet. Even Vesh felt something stir in his thorax. Pride maybe, for this strange species that had somehow become his friends. Plus, Elena added, breaking the moment, most of us are too busy arguing with each other to conquer anyone else. We've got like 200 countries on one planet. It's a whole thing. The class laughed, tension breaking. Vesh clicked his mandibles. All right, that concludes today's demonstration. Next week we'll cover human social structures and pack bonding. Specialist Briggs has promised not to adopt any of you, but I make no guarantees. As students filed out, chattering excitedly, Elena approached the podium. So, how'd I do? Less traumatic than last time. You cut yourself with a knife to prove a point about pain. Barely a scratch. Morp is filing a formal complaint. Morp files complaints when I sneeze too loud. Vesh's mandibles, spread in what Elena had learned was his version of a smile. You did well, specialist. The students are learning. More importantly, they're learning to respect humans not out of fear but out of understanding. That's the goal, right? Elena looked out at the empty lecture hall. We're all just trying to survive out here. Might as well understand each other. Indeed. Vesh paused. Though perhaps next week we could avoid any demonstrations involving your blood. No promises, Professor. No promises. As she left, Vesh pulled up his notes for the next lecture. Human pack bonding and adoption instincts. He was going to need to warn the students to avoid eye contact and never ever show vulnerability around humans, or they'd wake up adopted with nicknames and someone checking if they'd eaten enough. It was going to be a long semester. But watching Elena walk down the corridor, nodding to passing students who now looked at her with awe rather than dismissal, Vesh thought maybe it would be worth it. Humans, built different, indeed. And the galaxy was still trying to figure out if that was terrifying or wonderful, probably both.